There's a moment that happens in certain conversations that feels impossible to explain. Nothing bad has happened. Nobody has raised their voice. Nobody has said anything threatening. And yet, something feels different. You become unusually aware of yourself, the way you're sitting, the way you're speaking, the words you're choosing. Then you notice it. The person across from you hasn't blinked. Not much anyway, their eyes stay fixed on you, steady, uninterrupted. And suddenly the conversation feels heavier than it did 30 seconds ago. Why? Because blinking isn't just a physical behavior, it's a social behavior. And when it changes, the entire emotional atmosphere changes with it. Most people think communication happens through words. But that's not really true. Words explain thoughts. Behavior reveals mental states. And few behaviors are more revealing than the tiny things we stop doing when our brain becomes completely occupied. That's where blinking comes in. Because people don't stop blinking for one reason. They stop blinking for many reasons. And each reason tells a different story. Imagine you're watching the final seconds of a championship game. Everything is on the line. Your attention narrows. The crowd disappears. The room disappears. The only thing that exists is the moment in front of you. Now, imagine reading a message that could change your life, or hearing news you weren't expecting, or listening to someone confess something deeply personal. What do all these situations have in common? Attention becomes more important than comfort, and when attention becomes intense enough, blinking decreases. The brain becomes reluctant to miss information, even for a fraction of a second. That's why some people blink less when talking to you. Not because they're trying to dominate the conversation, because they're genuinely locked into it. You're holding their attention, but attention is only one piece of the puzzle, because there's another reason people stop blinking, and it's much less comfortable. Have you ever noticed what happens when someone is trying very hard not to reveal something? Maybe it's anger, maybe it's insecurity, maybe it's disappointment. Whatever it is, they're trying to contain it, to manage it, to control it. Their face becomes still, their movements become deliberate, their expressions become carefully monitored, almost as if every emotion must pass through a security checkpoint before reaching the outside world. And that's where blinking sometimes disappears, because when people start managing themselves, they often start managing everything, including their eyes. The strange thing is that we can usually feel this happening before we consciously notice it. We don't think they're controlling their expressions. We think something feels off. And that feeling matters, because human beings are experts at detecting authenticity, not consciously, instinctively. Your brain is constantly asking a question: is what I'm seeing natural? When the answer becomes unclear, discomfort appears. That's why a forced smile feels different from a real one. That's why rehearsed confidence feels different from genuine confidence. And that's why an unblinking stare can sometimes feel unsettling. Not because the eyes are unusual, because the emotional rhythm is. But here's where most people get it wrong. They assume that someone who barely blinks must be confident. In reality, confidence usually looks much quieter, much softer, much less dramatic. Truly confident people rarely need to hold eye contact like a weapon. They don't need to prove they're paying attention. They don't need to project power. They're comfortable enough to be natural. And natural behavior includes blinking, looking away occasionally, relaxing, breathing, being human. Ironically, excessive control often signals the opposite of confidence. It signals effort, and effort is revealing, because people work hardest on the things they fear losing: control, approval, status, respect. The more desperately someone wants these things, the more likely their behavior becomes exaggerated, including eye contact, including blinking, including every tiny social signal they believe others are judging. But there's another group of people who rarely blink, and they might be the most interesting of all: the observers. Every social environment has them. The people who speak less than they notice, the people who remember details everyone else misses, the people who can tell when the mood in a room changes before anyone says a word. When they're listening, they aren't waiting for their turn to speak. They're studying, watching, connecting patterns, and because their attention becomes so concentrated, their blinking naturally decreases. Not because they're trying to influence you, because they're trying to understand you. The difference is subtle, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. One gaze feels like pressure, the other feels like curiosity. One feels as if you're being evaluated, the other feels as if you're being understood. Same behavior, completely different emotional experience, and that's the real lesson. Human behavior is rarely about the behavior itself.